In a small village tucked far away from the noise of the cities, life moves slowly, shaped by customs passed down through many generations. Here, every marriage is more than a joining of two people, it is a binding of families, a weaving of destinies, and sometimes, the unlocking of secrets that are better left untouched. Among the dusty paths and quiet homes, there is one story whispered only in hushed voices, a story that holds a secret fortune hidden beneath the surface of a simple wedding celebration. It is a tale of hope and promise, but also of something unexpected, something that changed the lives of everyone in that village in ways no one could have imagined. What happens when the heart's desire meets the weight of tradition? When a promise made in love becomes tangled with the greed of those who seek more than just happiness? What shadows are cast when a union, celebrated by the whole community, carries with it an ancient secret that refuses to stay buried? This is not just the story of a marriage, but a story of choices, of trust broken and restored, and of the power that lies hidden in the bonds we form. This tale is woven into the very soil of that village, its roots deep and tangled, and its branches reaching far beyond what anyone thought possible. It is a secret that shaped the destiny of a people, and the mark it left is still felt today, in every smile, every whispered warning, and every quiet prayer. If you find yourself drawn to the mysteries and wonders of African folktales, to stories that speak of our history and the forces that move us, then stay with us. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so that you never miss the next story from the rich well of our heritage, stories that reveal the unseen, the unheard, and the unforgettable. Amahle was known by everyone in her village as a gentle soul, someone whose heart was full of kindness even when life was hard. She lived simply, with her family in a small hut made of mud and thatch, nestled among the green hills that rolled endlessly beyond the horizon. The village itself was a place where the earth seemed alive, where trees stood tall and proud, and the air was filled with the scent of fresh rain and the sound of birds singing from dawn until dusk. The rhythm of life here moved with the seasons, farmers planting and harvesting, women gathering by the river to wash clothes and share stories, and children playing barefoot on the dusty paths. The market was the heart of the village, a lively place where voices rose in song and laughter. Stalls overflowed with yams, kola nuts, bright cloths, and carved wooden figures that told stories of ancestors long gone. Near the center stood the great baobab tree, ancient and wide, its branches reaching like the arms of an old guardian watching over the people. Each day, the village elders would gather there to share news, settle disputes, and speak of the spirits that walked unseen among them. Amahle's days began with the soft light of dawn, as she rose to help her mother prepare the morning meal and tend to the small patch of farmland behind their home. She was skilled with her hands, careful and steady, whether planting seeds or weaving baskets. Though the work was tiring, Amahle carried a quiet hope inside her, a hope that one day her life might stretch beyond the narrow paths of the village, beyond the limits that bound her family and friends. She dreamed of new places and new chances, but those dreams were tangled with the reality of where she was born, and what was expected of her. Beneath the calm surface of village life, there were whispers that only the keenest ears could hear. Families watched each other with careful eyes, alliances held and broken like fragile branches in the wind. The chief's family, proud and powerful, cast long shadows over the smaller clans. There were old grudges, old debts, and the silent weight of unspoken rules that guided every step of daily life. Amahle knew this better than most. Her own family, humble and hard-working, was caught in the web of these old ties. Soon, she was told, she would be married to Obesai, the son of the chief. He was a man who carried both respect and mystery in his gaze. His wealth promised security, but his silence hid questions that unsettled even the bravest in the village. The news of this marriage spread like fire through the village, filling the air with excitement and unease. Though the idea of becoming the chief's wife brought a sense of pride to her family, Amahle felt a knot tighten in her heart. She wondered what awaited her beyond the walls of her small hut, beyond the familiar faces and fields. There was something in the air, something quiet but heavy, that hinted this marriage was not just about joining two lives. It was about something far greater, something that would change everything she thought she knew about her village and herself. Amahle's heart was caught between two worlds. On one side were her simple hopes, the quiet joy of tending the soil, the soft laughter of her siblings, the warm meals shared at sunset. On the other side stood the heavy shadow of what was expected from her now. The marriage to Obesai was not just a promise made by her family, it was a demand shaped by tradition and power. To refuse was unthinkable. To accept was to step into a life that held more questions than answers. Her family's fields barely produced enough to feed them, let alone offer gifts or wealth. Every day, her mother reminded her of the honor this marriage could bring, how becoming the wife of the chief's son would lift them from hardship. The village saw it as a prize, a chance for Amahle's family to rise in status, but she felt the weight of something heavier, the loss of freedom, the price of obedience that no one spoke aloud. In the village, customs ruled like kings. Bride price was not just money or goods, it was a sacred exchange, a symbol of respect between families. The negotiations were long and fierce, voices rising over bundles of yams, goats, and cloth. Amahle watched as her father's hands trembled, bargaining for the best terms, knowing that failure meant disgrace. The price was high, and the cost of refusal even higher. Disobedience was met with cold stares, whispers behind closed doors, and the slow erosion of one's place in the community. Amahle's mind raced with doubts. Did she truly know Obesai? He was often quiet, his smile rare and guarded. Stories floated around the village, some kind and hopeful, others dark and unsettling. Whispers said his family kept secrets, that their wealth came from old, forbidden things. Was this marriage a blessing, a chance for a better life? Or was it a trap, a web woven by power and greed that would trap her forever? The village itself seemed to hold its breath. Conversations hushed when her name was mentioned. Eyes followed her as she moved through the market or sat by the river. People spoke in riddles about the chief's family, about promises broken, debts unpaid, and a history that was wrapped in silence. Amahle felt the weight of these unseen tensions pressing on her shoulders. The village she had always known was changing before her eyes, and she was caught at the center, unsure whether she was a pawn or a player in the game that was unfolding. Amahle was not alone in facing the uncertain path before her. By her side stood Kofi, her childhood friend, a quiet and steady presence in a world that often felt harsh and unyielding. Kofi was a hunter, skilled with the bow and patient in the forest, moving through the trees like a shadow. His eyes held a kindness that soothed Amahle's restless spirit, and though he rarely spoke of his own dreams, he listened carefully to hers. In moments when fear crept into her heart, Kofi's calm words reminded her she was not forgotten. Then there was her grandmother, old and wise, a woman whose life was woven deeply into the fabric of the village's past. She was the keeper of stories, the tales of spirits and ancestors, of great deeds and terrible mistakes. On quiet evenings, as the fire flickered and the stars rose high, Amahle would sit close, absorbing the grandmother's words that hinted at secrets buried long ago. These stories were more than just entertainment. They were warnings, lessons passed down to protect the village and its people. Sometimes, the grandmother's eyes would darken, as if she saw shadows beyond the flames, shadows connected to the fate that awaited Amahle. Obesai was a man who held the attention of the village wherever he went. He carried himself with a quiet confidence, his smile rare but powerful, a spark that drew people near. To many, he was the perfect suitor, strong, wealthy, and destined to lead. But beneath that charm, there was something difficult to read, a coolness that set him apart. In his silence, Amahle sensed walls built carefully around a secret life she did not yet understand. His eyes, sometimes soft with affection, could turn sharp and distant without warning. The elders spoke in hushed tones when they thought no one was listening, their words heavy with concern. They warned of old debts owed to forgotten powers, of families who carried burdens not visible to the eye. Obesai's family, the most powerful in the village, had their own stories, stories of control and sacrifice, of loyalty tested and broken. Behind closed doors, there were quiet betrayals, alliances formed in shadows, and decisions that rippled through the village like an unseen wind. Amahle felt the tension growing like a slow storm inside her. What had once seemed like a simple promise now felt tangled in dangers she could barely name. The smiles and greetings that surrounded her marriage were tinged with unease, and sometimes, in the dead of night, when the village lay still, she heard whispers that chilled her to the bone. The life she was about to enter was not just about love or family, it was a doorway to something old and powerful, something that would test her strength in ways she never imagined. The day of Amahle's wedding dawned bright and clear, yet beneath the sunlight lay a heavy stillness that no one dared speak of. The village had gathered in full, the air alive with the rhythm of drums, the colors of cloth bright and vivid, the scent of incense and fresh earth filling every corner. The bride was adorned in fine beads and cloth, her face glowing with both hope and a quiet unease. Around her, smiles and laughter mingled with whispered glances, as if the village itself held its breath, waiting for something unseen. The ceremony unfolded with all the grandeur expected in such a union, with blessings offered by elders and songs sung to honor the joining of two families. But even as the drums echoed, a shadow crossed the faces of some guests, old grudges and unspoken fears stirring beneath the surface. Amahle felt it too, the weight of eyes watching her every move, the chill beneath the warm sun. It was soon after the ceremony, as the celebrations moved into the evening, that the first cracks began to show. A trusted ally, someone Amahle had counted on, whispered words that cut deep. Obesai's family carried a curse tied to the very dowry that had been so fiercely negotiated. This curse was no mere superstition, but a binding power cast generations ago, one meant to protect a secret fortune hidden deep within the village's earth, a treasure sacred to Obesai's ancestors. Amahle's world shifted as she learned the truth. The secret fortune was more than wealth, it was a sacred artifact, an object of great power and danger. Its presence explained the coldness in Obesai's gaze, the careful silences, the tension that pulsed beneath the village's surface. The marriage was not just a union of families, but a pact to guard this hidden treasure, a pact with consequences that reached far beyond her own fate. Jealousy and greed stirred like a wildfire among those who heard the secret. Old rivalries reignited, and some whispered that the treasure could bring prosperity, or destruction. Warnings from the village's spiritual leaders grew urgent, calling for respect and caution, but the lure of the fortune tempted many beyond reason. Amahle found herself caught in the storm. Trust broke like fragile glass as betrayal came from the most unexpected places. A death struck the village, a sudden, unexplained loss that left hearts shattered and eyes filled with fear. Those who once promised protection turned away, and whispers of exile began to spread. Amahle's own place in the village became uncertain, her future shrouded in sorrow and suspicion. This tragedy carved deep wounds into Amahle's spirit. The pain of loss and betrayal settled heavy on her chest, and with it grew a fierce determination. The life she thought she knew was gone, replaced by a new reality that demanded strength she had never imagined. It was the turning point, a moment when the girl who had dreamed of freedom faced a destiny bound by secrets, power, and the weight of an ancient curse. Amahle's sorrow sank deep into her bones, turning the warmth she once felt into a cold fire that burned within her. The loss, the betrayal, the heavy weight of exile, all these stirred something ancient, something that had long slept beneath the surface of her being. In the quiet hours of the night, when the village lay still under the watchful gaze of the moon, Amahle felt a presence rise inside her, a voice older than memory, a power older than the trees surrounding her home. Her grandmother's stories came rushing back, tales of spirits that lived between worlds, guardians who took the shape of the unseen to protect what was sacred. Amahle's heart beat faster as she realized that the curse was not just on her family but was tied to her very soul. The pain and anger she carried became a channel, awakening the spirit of an ancestor long forgotten but never truly gone. One evening, beneath the ancient baobab tree, Amahle found herself drawn to a circle of stones that marked a sacred place. As she sat there, tears streaming down her face, the air grew thick with a strange energy. The winds whispered in voices only she could hear, and the earth beneath her trembled softly. Her body began to change, her eyes glowing with a light that was not her own, her skin shimmering faintly as if touched by the spirit world. The air around her shimmered, and a soft hum filled the night. Amahle was no longer just a young woman from the village. She had become something more, a guardian bound by ancient law, a mysterious force tied to the secret fortune and the fate of the village itself. Some would come to fear her, others would seek her protection, but all would know that she had crossed the line between the living and the spirit world. Her motivations were clear and fierce. She was no longer the victim of betrayal, she was a force of justice and revenge, protector of her family's honor and the legacy buried deep in the village's heart. The anger that had once threatened to destroy her became a shield and a weapon. She moved with a grace both terrifying and beautiful, her presence a reminder that some powers, once awakened, could never be silenced. Amahle's transformation was tragic, yet it held a strange beauty, a story of a girl who lost everything and found a strength greater than any one person could hold. She became a legend in her own right, a figure of both fear and hope, standing between the past and the future, guarding secrets that could not be forgotten. Since Amahle's transformation, the village had not been the same. Strange things began to happen, things that no one could easily explain. At night, people heard soft whispers carried on the wind, voices that seemed to call from the shadows between the trees. Lights flickered in places where there should have been none, and the quiet roads that led to the forest grew dark and cold even under the moon's glow. Some who ventured too close to the old baobab tree returned shaken, their eyes wide with fear, speaking of shapes moving just beyond sight. There were also those who vanished without a trace, people who left their homes in the evening and never came back. Some said they had been taken by the spirit that now lived in Amahle, while others whispered of punishments for those who disrespected the ancient laws. Families gathered in small groups, lighting fires and offering prayers, hoping to keep the dark forces at bay. Villagers told stories to one another in hushed voices, stories that mixed fear with respect. They spoke of Amahle as both a protector and a threat, a powerful presence that could bring blessings or curses depending on how she was treated. Some elders recalled old folktales of spirits who guarded treasures and punished those who tried to take what was not theirs. These tales, once thought to be just stories, now felt real and close, as if the past had come to walk again among them. In the culture of the village, the spirits of ancestors were never far away. They were seen as guides and protectors, but also as forces to be honored and feared. Ancestral curses were not mere superstition, they were real and serious, believed to shape the lives of families for generations. These beliefs held the community together, shaping how they lived, how they treated one another, and how they faced hardship. To anger a spirit was to invite disaster, and to ignore the old ways was to risk losing everything. The village became divided. Some families chose to stay, lighting offerings and performing rituals to calm Amahle's spirit. They sought to honor her, hoping to find peace and protection in return. Others could not bear the fear and unrest, they packed their belongings and left under the cover of darkness, afraid that staying would mean danger. A few, driven by anger or disbelief, tried to find ways to confront the power they did not understand, gathering weapons and forming groups to protect themselves. This growing tension hung over the village like a thick fog, changing the way people spoke, moved, and lived. Amahle's presence was felt in every whispered prayer, every careful glance toward the forest, and every decision made with a glance to the old stories that now held new meaning. The village was caught between two worlds, the world of the living and the world of spirits, and the path ahead was uncertain for all who remained. The village elders, burdened by the weight of what had unfolded, gathered beneath the great baobab tree once more. They spoke in low voices, their faces drawn tight with worry and determination. These were the keepers of the old ways, men and women who carried the knowledge of rituals passed down through countless generations. Together, they prepared ceremonies meant to soothe the restless spirit that Amahle had become. Offerings were gathered, fresh yams, kola nuts, fragrant herbs, and the blood of goats, all arranged carefully to honor the ancestors and seek forgiveness. The villagers watched with a mixture of hope and fear as the elders called upon the spirits, their voices rising in chants that seemed to echo from the earth itself. Fires burned bright through the night, and drums beat a steady rhythm meant to guide Amahle's spirit toward peace. But the ceremonies were not without tension. At times, the winds howled through the trees as if answering back, and strange shadows flickered at the edges of the firelight. Some believed the rituals were working. Others whispered that the spirit was growing more restless, more powerful. Among those who tried to reach Amahle was Kofi, her childhood friend. His heart was heavy with care for her, and he was determined to understand the pain she carried beneath the spirit's fierce exterior. Time and again, he ventured into the deep forest, following the faint traces of her presence. He spoke to the wind and the trees, hoping his words might find her, reminding her of who she once was. On several nights, he came close, sensing a presence watching him from the shadows, but the spirit remained just out of reach, a whisper, a flicker, a breath on the back of his neck. There were moments when the village held its breath. A ritual would begin with a promise, only to be interrupted by sudden storms, animals fleeing, or the eerie silence that fell like a blanket over the land. Each failed attempt deepened the fear among the people. The spirit's responses were unpredictable, sometimes gentle, sometimes fierce, as if Amahle herself struggled between her human heart and the power that had claimed her. As these events unfolded, a quiet conflict stirred within the village. The elders clung to the old traditions, trusting the wisdom of their ancestors to guide them through this crisis. But younger villagers, influenced by new ideas and the wider world beyond their homes, questioned the need for rituals and sacrifices. Some spoke openly of skepticism, doubting that such ceremonies could hold real power. This division created tension, with arguments flaring over the path forward, between respect for ancient ways and the desire for change. Throughout it all, the village lived in a delicate balance of fear, hope, and desperation. Families lit candles and whispered prayers, clinging to the belief that peace could be restored. Others prepared quietly to leave, seeking safety beyond the forests and hills. And somewhere in the spaces between, Amahle's spirit moved, unseen but felt by all, as the village grappled with a power greater than any one of them, caught between the worlds of the living and the spirits they had long revered. The night when all would come to an end, or a new beginning, descended quietly over the village, heavy with a silence that pressed against every heart. The moon hung low, a pale eye watching the earth, casting long shadows that seemed to twist and writhe among the trees. In the center of the village, near the great baobab that had witnessed so many stories, a small group gathered. Obesai stood among them, his face hard and determined, his eyes flickering with greed and fear. Around him were those who sought to claim the secret fortune, to break the power Amahle's spirit held over the land. Amahle herself appeared like a shadow born of the night, her form shifting between human and something beyond. Her eyes glowed softly, a fierce light burning deep within. The air grew thick with tension, the kind that makes every breath shallow, every sound a thunderclap. Crickets ceased their song, and even the wind seemed to hold its breath as two worlds prepared to collide, the restless spirit that Amahle had become, and the human will desperate to save what remained of the village. Or to seize the treasure for themselves. The ground beneath their feet trembled lightly, a warning whispered by the earth itself. Amahle moved with a power that was both beautiful and terrible. Her voice rose, not in anger but in sorrow, calling out the names of those who had betrayed trust, who had allowed greed to poison what should have been sacred. Obesai's face twisted with guilt and defiance, caught between his desire for wealth and the love that had once bound him to Amahle. Words turned to cries, and cries to silence as the battle of wills unfolded. Amahle's power surged, bending the shadows, twisting the very air, while Obesai and his allies fought to hold on to their claim. The night exploded with light and sound, the crack of breaking branches, the clash of unseen forces, the sharp scent of burning herbs and earth. In the midst of this, a sacrifice was made. One who had stood silently among the crowd stepped forward, offering themselves to the spirit in a gesture of peace and love. This act, unexpected and pure, shifted the tide. Amahle's fury softened, replaced by a deep, aching understanding. The power she held was not just for punishment, but for protection, a legacy of love and loss intertwined. As the dawn began to break, a truth was revealed. The secret fortune was never meant to be a treasure for wealth or power, but a symbol of the village's history and the bonds that held them together. The marriage was not just about two lives joined, but about respect for the past and the promise of the future. Obesai, Amahle, and the village all stood at the edge of a new path, one defined by healing and honor rather than greed and betrayal. The night ended not with destruction, but with transformation, of spirits, of hearts, and of a village that had learned the true meaning of its most sacred story. After the night when shadows and truths clashed beneath the baobab, the village awoke to a changed world. The air felt lighter, the sun brighter, as if the earth itself had sighed in relief. The people moved with a new understanding, their steps careful but hopeful. Amahle's spirit, once restless and fierce, had found a way to rest, not in silence but in the quiet strength of protection. Her presence remained, a guardian watching over the village, but no longer one who brought fear, rather, a force that reminded everyone of the price of respect and the cost of betrayal. Obesai's family, once proud and untouchable, now carried the weight of their choices. Some among them sought forgiveness, others retreated into the shadows of regret. The ties that bound the families shifted, reshaped by the events that had unfolded. There was healing, slow and painful, but it was there, a weaving back together of trust and honor that had been torn apart. The village itself began to change, with new voices rising alongside the old, blending tradition with lessons learned. The story of Amahle and the secret fortune became more than just a tale to be told around fires, it became a living lesson passed from generation to generation. It taught that respect for tradition was not blind obedience but an understanding of the deeper bonds that hold a community together. It warned against the dangers of greed, how the hunger for more could bring destruction not just to individuals, but to whole families and villages. And it showed the power of forgiveness and justice, how even in the darkest times, there was room for healing and hope. This folktale, like many others, became a thread in the rich tapestry of the village's culture. It shaped ceremonies, guided decisions, and reminded people of their place in a story much larger than themselves. The lessons it carried were timeless, speaking across the years to anyone who listened, about the balance between human desire and the forces that shape our world, about the ties to ancestors and the land, and about the courage it takes to face both darkness and light. In this way, Amahle's story continues to live, not just in memory, but in the heart of the village and in the spirit of its people. It reminds all who hear it that the past is never truly gone, that the lessons of old carry the power to guide the future, and that the greatest treasures are not those buried beneath the earth, but those found within the strength and love of a community bound together by respect and truth. And so, the secret fortune remains buried deep beneath the earth, watched over by the spirit of a woman who dared to stand against the tides of fate. Her story lives on, not just in the whispers of the wind or the shadows beneath the baobab, but in the hearts of those who remember. It asks us to look closer at the stories that surround us, to wonder what mysteries lie hidden beneath the surface of our own villages, waiting to be discovered. If this tale stirred something within you, if it made you pause and think about the power of our traditions and the strength found in our shared history, then please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and ring the bell so you never miss the stories that connect us to our roots. Share your thoughts in the comments below, tell us what you believe, what you fear, or what folktales you want to hear next. Your voice helps keep these stories alive. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the rich and timeless heritage of African folktales. By listening, sharing, and honoring these stories, you help preserve the wisdom of our ancestors and ensure their lessons continue to guide generations to come.